Most people think intelligence means winning arguments. They believe that if they can prove someone wrong, if they can present better facts, better logic, better evidence, they win. But in the real world, that belief is one of the fastest ways to lose your power. Because the moment you start arguing with someone who refuses to think, you step into a trap. A trap built on ego, a trap built on emotion, a trap where logic has no authority. Think about it. Have you ever tried to reason with someone who simply would not listen? You bring facts, they bring louder opinions. You explain calmly, they twist your words. You stay rational, they get emotional, and suddenly the conversation is no longer about truth. It becomes about pride, about winning, about who can dominate the room. This is where many intelligent people make a critical mistake. They assume the other person is playing the same game, the game of logic. But foolish people are not trying to understand you. They are trying to defend their ego. And the more you argue with them, the more control you give them over your attention, your time, and your emotional state. This is exactly the kind of situation Niccolo Machiavelli warned about. Machiavelli understood something that most people learn far too late. Power is not about proving that you are right. Power is about deciding where your energy goes. The intelligent mind doesn't waste its strength fighting battles that cannot be won. Instead, it steps back, observes, calculates, and quietly shifts the situation in its favor. You see, foolish people want a fight. They want reactions. They want your attention. But the moment you stop giving them that attention, the dynamic changes. Suddenly they are speaking, but no one powerful is listening. And that is the moment they lose influence. In this video, you are going to learn 8 Machiavellian strategies that intelligent people use to deal with foolish individuals without arguing, without explaining endlessly, and without losing control of the situation. These strategies are not about humiliating people. They are about protecting your power. Because the real sign of intelligence is not winning arguments. It is knowing which arguments are not worth entering at all. And once you understand these strategies, you will start seeing something fascinating. The smartest people in the room rarely argue the most. They simply control the room in quieter ways. Before we move forward, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. Silence is power. Now let's begin with the first strategy intelligent people use when dealing with foolish individuals. Number 1. Recognize when logic is useless. The first discipline intelligent people develop is the ability to recognize when logic has no value in a conversation. This sounds simple, but it is surprisingly difficult for many people. When you value reason, you instinctively believe that facts should solve disagreements. You assume that if someone is wrong, all you have to do is show them better information. But that assumption only works when the other person is searching for truth. Many people are not. They are searching for validation. They are protecting their pride, their identity, or their public image. In those moments, facts become irrelevant. Logic becomes background noise. Even clear evidence will be rejected because accepting it would mean admitting weakness. And for many individuals, protecting ego is more important than discovering truth. This is why arguments with foolish people often feel exhausting. No matter how clear your explanation is, the conversation keeps circling back to the same emotional resistance. The goal of the discussion quietly changes. It is no longer about understanding reality. It becomes about avoiding embarrassment. At that point, logic has already lost its power. Intelligent people notice this shift early. They pay attention to signals that reveal the true nature of the conversation. When someone constantly interrupts, ignores facts, exaggerates claims, or twists words, these behaviors reveal something important. The person is not listening. They are performing. They are speaking to defend their position rather than examine it. The discussion has become theater instead of inquiry. This is the moment strategic thinkers make a crucial decision. They disengage, not because they lack arguments, not because they cannot win, but because they recognize the battlefield is corrupted. Trying to reason with someone who refuses to reason is like trying to play chess with someone who keeps knocking the pieces off the board. You may know the game, you may understand the strategy, but the rules are no longer being respected. Continuing the game only drains your time and attention. Machiavelli understood this human tendency centuries ago. He observed that people often act according to emotion and self-interest long before they act according to logic. Machiavelli once said, "Men in general judge more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see, but few can truly understand." This insight reveals something profound. Many people do not analyze situations deeply. They react to appearances, emotions, and social pressure. So when a conversation becomes emotional theater instead of rational exchange, the intelligent move is not escalation. It is withdrawal. Strategic thinkers understand that silence and disengagement protect their most valuable resource, clarity of mind. Instead of trying to drag someone toward reason, they simply step away from the argument entirely. This preserves their focus for situations that actually matter. Over time, this habit creates a powerful reputation. People begin to notice something different about you. You do not rush into debates. You do not chase every disagreement. You do not react impulsively. You choose your engagements carefully, and that restraint signals something subtle but powerful: control. Because the person who decides when not to argue is often the person who truly understands the situation. Number 2, refuse to waste your energy. One of the most overlooked forms of strength is the ability to protect your energy. Most people guard their money carefully. They guard their reputation. They guard their possessions. But they rarely guard the one resource that determines the quality of every decision they make: their mental and emotional energy. Every unnecessary argument drains that resource. Every heated debate consumes attention that could be used for something meaningful. And the more time you spend defending yourself against foolish ideas, the less focus you have for building something valuable. This is why intelligent people treat their attention like a strategic asset. They understand that energy is limited. Once it is spent, it cannot be recovered easily. A single pointless conflict can linger in your thoughts for hours. You replay the conversation in your head. You imagine better responses. You think about what you should have said. Meanwhile, the person who provoked the argument continues with their day without a second thought. This is the hidden cost of arguing with foolish individuals. They drag you into emotional turbulence while gaining nothing of substance. The entire interaction becomes a distraction from your real priorities. Strategic thinkers refuse to fall into this pattern. Instead of reacting impulsively, they pause and evaluate the situation. They ask themselves a quiet but powerful question: is this worth my energy? Most of the time, the answer is no. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every criticism deserves attention. Not every accusation deserves defense. When you begin to understand this principle, your behavior changes dramatically. You stop feeling obligated to reply to every comment. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop entering debates that lead nowhere. Your silence becomes deliberate. Your focus becomes protected, and the effect is immediate. You feel calmer, clearer, and more in control of your thoughts. Situations that once provoked you suddenly feel insignificant. This is not weakness, it is discipline. Centuries ago, Niccolò Machiavelli observed that successful leaders were careful about where they directed their attention. They did not scatter their energy across every conflict. They conserved it for moments that truly shaped outcomes. Machiavelli once said, "He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command." True command requires clarity, and clarity cannot exist in a mind constantly pulled into trivial disputes. When you refuse to waste your energy on foolish arguments, you send a subtle signal. You demonstrate that your attention is valuable and limited. People begin to notice that provoking you does not produce the reaction they expected. And without your reaction, their influence disappears. The conversation ends before it even begins. Over time, this discipline strengthens your presence. You appear composed, controlled, focused. Others may still argue loudly, but you remain steady, observing rather than reacting. This calmness is not accidental. It is the result of protecting your energy with intention. Because the truth is simple, the smartest people do not win every argument. They simply refuse to participate in arguments that lead nowhere. Before we move to the next strategy, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. My energy is valuable. Number 3. Silence is a psychological weapon. Most people underestimate the power of silence. They believe influence comes from speaking more, explaining more, defending more. When someone challenges them, their instinct is to respond immediately. They rush to clarify their position, correct mistakes, and prove they are right. But this instinct often creates the opposite effect. The more you talk in a heated situation, the more opportunities you give the other person to twist your words, interrupt you, or drag the conversation deeper into confusion. Instead of resolving the issue, constant explanation feeds the conflict. Intelligent people understand a different principle. Sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. Silence is not weakness. Silence is control. When you refuse to react instantly, you change the entire rhythm of the interaction. The person expecting a reaction suddenly faces something unfamiliar. A calm, steady absence of emotional engagement. And this creates pressure. Most foolish individuals depend on reactions to maintain momentum. Their arguments grow louder and more dramatic when someone pushes back. Conflict gives them energy. It gives them attention. But when they meet silence, that energy has nowhere to go. Instead of escalating the situation, silence forces them to continue speaking without resistance. And something interesting happens when people talk without interruption. They begin revealing too much. They exaggerate. They contradict themselves. They expose emotional motives that were hidden beneath their words. What started as confidence slowly turns into discomfort. Without someone to fight against, the argument loses its structure. This is why silence can be such a powerful psychological tool. It allows the other person to expose their own flaws while you remain composed and observant. Strategic thinkers use this intentionally. They listen carefully instead of rushing to defend themselves. They allow pauses to exist in conversations. They give others the space to talk themselves into mistakes. While others react emotionally, they remain still. Machiavelli once said, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him." This insight applies to conversation as well. When you observe quietly, you begin to see people clearly. Their character, their intentions, and their limitations become visible over time. Silence sharpens your awareness. Instead of focusing on what you want to say next, you focus on what the other person is actually showing you. And this knowledge becomes power. You start recognizing patterns. You notice who speaks from emotion and who speaks from reason. You learn which individuals are worth engaging with and which ones thrive on chaos. Most importantly, you learn patience. Silence teaches you to slow down the moment. You no longer feel pressured to react instantly. You give yourself space to think before acting. This calmness shifts the balance of control. While others rush to defend their pride, you remain steady, evaluating the situation from a distance. And in many cases, the argument dissolves on its own. Because when one person refuses to fight, the conflict cannot continue. Drop this affirmation in the comments. Silence is strength. Number 4, never fight on their battlefield. One of the most dangerous mistakes intelligent people make is accepting arguments on someone else's terms. When a foolish person starts a debate, they usually choose the environment carefully. The setting may appear ordinary. A crowded discussion, a heated online thread, or a public confrontation. But beneath the surface, these environments are built for confusion. They reward speed instead of thought. They reward volume instead of clarity. They reward emotion instead of logic. In these spaces, the person who shouts the loudest often appears victorious, even if their ideas make little sense. The conversation becomes a performance rather than an exchange of understanding. This is why foolish individuals feel comfortable in these situations. Chaos protects them. Disorder allows exaggeration, interruption, and distortion to flourish. Facts become optional. Nuance disappears. The loudest voice begins to dominate attention. Strategic thinkers recognize this pattern quickly. They understand that intelligence cannot flourish in an environment designed for noise. So instead of trying to argue more effectively in these settings, they make a different move entirely. They refuse to fight there. Walking away from the wrong battlefield is not surrender. It is a strategic repositioning. Imagine a skilled chess player forced to play on a table where someone keeps shaking the board. Pieces slide out of position. Moves become unclear. The structure of the game collapses. The smartest player would not attempt to play faster or shout louder. They would simply stop the game until the board is stable. The same principle applies to conversations. When someone drags you into an environment full of interruption, sarcasm, or emotional manipulation, they are shifting the discussion into terrain where confusion benefits them. Remaining there only strengthens their advantage. Intelligent people instead choose environments where clarity matters. They prefer calm discussions, private conversations, or moments where both individuals can think without pressure. In these conditions, logic regains its authority. Emotion fades. Reality becomes harder to ignore. Machiavelli once said, "A wise ruler ought never to keep faith when by doing so it would be against his interests." This idea reflects a deeper principle. Strategy requires flexibility. You do not blindly follow expectations when those expectations place you at a disadvantage. Instead, you adapt. You decide when and where engagement will happen, and if the conditions are unfavorable, you simply decline the invitation. Over time, this behavior changes how others perceive you. People begin to realize that provoking you in chaotic situations will not produce the spectacle they expected. You do not argue in public for attention. You do not compete with noise. You maintain composure and move discussions to environments where thought is possible. And when that shift occurs, something interesting happens. The person who relied on confusion suddenly struggles. Without the protection of chaos, their arguments become weaker, their exaggerations become obvious. The battlefield has changed, and now intelligence has the advantage. Number 5. Control the frame of the conversation. One of the most subtle forms of power in any discussion is the ability to control the frame. Most people believe arguments are won by having better points. They focus on collecting facts, preparing responses, and defending their position with stronger explanations. While this approach seems logical, it often traps you in a reactive role. You become someone responding to attacks rather than directing the direction of the conversation. Foolish individuals rely heavily on this dynamic. They throw accusations, exaggerations, or misleading claims into the discussion and force you to respond to them. Each time you answer one point, they move to another. The discussion becomes endless. You are constantly defending. They are constantly shifting the focus. This is where intelligent people take a different approach. Instead of fighting inside the frame created by the other person, they change the frame entirely. A frame is the lens through which a conversation is viewed. It determines what the discussion is about, what questions matter, and which standards are used to evaluate ideas. If someone says, "You're wrong because everyone disagrees with you," they are creating a frame based on popularity. If you argue inside that frame, you are already accepting their rules. But intelligent thinkers do something else. They redirect the conversation toward principles, evidence, or long-term consequences. For example, instead of arguing about whether many people believe something, they ask a calm question. What evidence supports that claim? That simple question shifts the frame from popularity to proof. Suddenly the conversation operates under different standards. Emotion becomes less useful. Clarity becomes necessary. Another powerful technique is asking questions that expose contradictions. When someone presents an exaggerated statement, the intelligent response is not immediate disagreement. Instead, it is curiosity. How would that work in practice? What outcome would that produce? These questions encourage the other person to examine their own logic. Often they begin to notice gaps in their argument without you directly confronting them. This method is quiet but powerful. Rather than attacking the person, you guide the discussion toward deeper thinking. Niccolò Machiavelli understood the importance of perception in shaping influence. He observed that controlling how situations are understood often matters more than controlling the actions themselves. He said, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, because everyone can see and few can feel." This observation reveals how easily people are influenced by appearances and narratives. When you control the frame of a conversation, you control the narrative through which others interpret events. And the person who shapes the narrative quietly shapes the outcome. This does not require aggression. It does not require endless explanations. It simply requires awareness. You observe the frame being presented. You recognize its weaknesses. Then you gently redirect the discussion toward stronger ground. Over time, this habit changes how conversations unfold around you. People notice that discussions with you feel different. Instead of becoming chaotic, they become structured. Instead of emotional reactions, they lead toward thoughtful examination. You become someone who quietly guides the direction of dialogue, and that guidance carries influence. Because the person who controls the frame does not need to argue loudly. They simply determine what the conversation is truly about. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I control the frame. Number 6. Use strategic indifference. One of the most frustrating experiences for someone seeking conflict is being met with indifference. Not anger, not resistance, not even disagreement, just calm disinterest. Foolish individuals often rely on emotional reactions to maintain influence. They provoke, exaggerate, criticize, or misrepresent ideas in order to create tension. The moment someone reacts emotionally, they gain control of the interaction. Why? Because reactions give them energy. A heated response confirms that they have touched a nerve. It signals that their words have power over your emotional state. Once that happens, the conversation shifts from thoughtful exchange to emotional competition. Strategic thinkers refuse to give that advantage. Instead, they practice a discipline that many people misunderstand: indifference. Strategic indifference does not mean you lack awareness. It does not mean you are passive or unable to defend your position. It simply means you choose not to reward foolish behavior with emotional attention. When someone attempts to provoke you and receives no reaction, the dynamic changes immediately. The tension they try to create collapses. Imagine someone throwing a stone into a lake, expecting a dramatic splash. Instead, the surface remains calm. The stone sinks quietly without disturbance. That calmness removes the spectacle they hope to create. This approach is particularly powerful because many people depend on attention to maintain their sense of importance. When they attempt to provoke a reaction and receive none, they begin to lose momentum. Their statements become louder, more exaggerated, or more desperate. But without engagement from you, their efforts feel empty. Over time, this lack of reaction teaches them something valuable. You cannot be manipulated easily. Niccolo Machiavelli understood that power often lies in controlling your visible reactions. Leaders who displayed constant emotion revealed too much about their intentions and vulnerabilities. Those who remained composed were far harder to influence. He said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." This insight reminds us that intelligence acts with foresight rather than impulse. Instead of reacting emotionally in the moment, strategic thinkers consider the long-term effect of their behavior. They recognize that emotional displays can hand control to others. Indifference protects that control. When you respond to provocation with calm neutrality, you communicate something subtle but powerful. Your attention is selective. Your emotional state is not easily disturbed. People begin to notice this steadiness. They realize that attempts to provoke you will not create the drama they expected. Conversations that once turned chaotic now end quickly because the fuel for conflict is missing. And the more consistently you maintain this discipline, the more it shapes your reputation. You become known as someone who does not react impulsively, someone who observes before responding, someone who remains composed even when others attempt to create pressure. This calm presence changes the balance of power in subtle ways. Instead of being pulled into emotional battles, you remain grounded in your priorities. You decide which conversations deserve engagement and which ones deserve nothing at all. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I stay unbothered. Number 7. Let time reveal the truth. One of the greatest advantages intelligent people possess is patience. Most individuals feel an urgent need to correct mistakes immediately. When someone spreads misinformation, exaggerates claims, or speaks confidently about something they barely understand, the instinct is to step in and fix it right away. The urge feels natural. You want to restore accuracy. You want the situation to make sense again. But intelligent people recognize that rushing to correct every error often creates more resistance than clarity. When people feel publicly challenged, their instinct is to defend themselves. pride activates, ego rises. The conversation becomes a battle for status rather than a search for truth. This is why immediate confrontation frequently backfires. The person you are correcting becomes more stubborn, not more thoughtful. Strategic thinkers understand something different. They recognize that time has a unique ability to expose inconsistency. When someone speaks carelessly or builds arguments on weak foundations, those weaknesses eventually become visible. Contradictions appear, promises fail, predictions collapse. Reality quietly reveals the difference between confidence and competence. Instead of forcing the truth into the conversation, intelligent individuals allow it to surface naturally. They observe. They remember what was said. They watch how events unfold. Over time, patterns emerge. The person who once appeared certain begins to struggle, explaining why outcomes did not match their claims. The confidence they projected starts to fade as reality contradicts their narrative. And when that moment arrives, the correction becomes effortless. You do not need long arguments. You do not need dramatic confrontation. The facts speak clearly on their own. Patience creates credibility. When you consistently allow time to reveal the truth, people begin to notice something about you. You do not rush to attack others. You do not chase every mistake with aggressive correction. Instead, you remain calm and observant. And when you finally speak, your words carry weight. Niccolo Machiavelli understood the importance of patience in strategy. He observed that many victories occur not through immediate action, but through careful timing. Machiavelli once said, "Fortune favors the bold." Many people misunderstand this statement. Boldness does not always mean acting instantly. Sometimes boldness means resisting the pressure to react prematurely. It means trusting that reality will eventually expose what is false. Strategic thinkers know that time acts like a spotlight. It illuminates character, competence, and consistency. Someone who relies on exaggeration or manipulation cannot maintain that performance forever. Eventually, the cracks appear, and when they do, the truth becomes undeniable. By waiting patiently, you avoid unnecessary conflict while allowing reality to perform the correction for you. This approach protects your credibility. Instead of appearing combative, you appear measured. Instead of appearing defensive, you appear confident. Your calm observation communicates something powerful. You trust the truth to stand on its own. And in many situations, that trust proves correct. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. Truth reveals itself. Number 8. Focus on outcomes, not ego. The final difference between foolish behavior and intelligent strategy comes down to one simple question. What are you actually trying to achieve? Many arguments begin because someone feels their pride has been challenged. A comment feels disrespectful. An opinion feels dismissive. A criticism feels unfair. The natural response is to defend yourself immediately. In that moment, the goal quietly shifts. The objective is no longer solving a problem or improving a situation. The objective becomes protecting your ego. Once ego enters the conversation, rational thinking begins to disappear. Each person tries to prove their superiority. Voices rise, positions harden. The original issue gets buried beneath emotional reactions. Foolish individuals fall into this trap constantly. They believe that losing an argument means losing status, so they fight relentlessly to avoid appearing wrong, even when continuing the conflict damages relationships, opportunities, or progress. Intelligent people see the situation differently. They ask a different question. What outcome actually matters here? This question changes everything. If arguing with someone will not improve the result, then the argument becomes meaningless. If proving a point does not move the situation forward, then defending that point is simply noise. Strategic thinkers measure their actions by results rather than pride. Sometimes the smartest move is letting someone believe they have won the discussion. While they celebrate their victory, you quietly move forward toward your real objective. This does not mean surrendering your principles. It means recognizing that not every disagreement deserves a battlefield. When ego disappears from the equation, your thinking becomes sharper. You begin to evaluate situations based on impact rather than emotion. You ask practical questions. Will this conversation improve the outcome? Will this conflict produce something valuable? Will this argument change anything important? If the answer is no, you redirect your attention toward actions that actually create progress. Niccolò Machiavelli emphasized this pragmatic approach to decision-making. His philosophy focused on effectiveness rather than appearances. He understood that leaders who prioritized pride over results often weakened their own position. Machiavelli once said, "A wise man should always follow the paths beaten by great men." The great strategists throughout history shared one common habit. They focused on outcomes. They did not waste energy proving themselves right in every disagreement. Instead, they directed their effort toward actions that moved them closer to their goals. This mindset creates a powerful shift in how you interact with others. You become less reactive, less defensive, less concerned with winning conversations. Instead, you become focused on progress. When someone attempts to drag you into a pointless argument, you evaluate the situation calmly. If the discussion will not change anything meaningful, you simply step away. Your time returns to things that actually matter. Your attention remains clear, and your energy goes toward building, improving, and advancing. Over time, this habit transforms the way people perceive you. Instead of seeing someone obsessed with proving themselves, they see someone who moves steadily toward results. That reputation carries quiet authority, because true intelligence is not measured by how often you win arguments. It is measured by how consistently you achieve meaningful outcomes. By now, you can probably see the pattern. Intelligent people do not waste their strength trying to defeat foolish individuals in endless arguments. They understand something far more important. The goal is not to win debates. The goal is to maintain control. Every pointless argument pulls your attention away from what actually matters. It distracts your mind, drains your energy, and places you inside someone else's emotional battlefield. And the more time you spend there, the less time you spend building something meaningful. This is why the smartest people rarely argue the most. They observe, they calculate, and when necessary, they simply step away. Niccolò Machiavelli understood that real power often works quietly. It doesn't depend on shouting louder than others or proving a point in every disagreement. It depends on discipline. The discipline to choose your battles. The discipline to protect your focus. The discipline to remain calm while others lose control. When you apply the strategies from this video, something interesting begins to happen. Foolish individuals no longer have power over your attention. Their provocations lose their effect. Their attempts to drag you into conflict simply fail, and without your reaction, their influence fades. This does not mean you avoid all confrontation. It means you engage only when the outcome truly matters. You stop arguing for ego. You start acting with intention. And that shift changes the entire dynamic of your interactions. If this video made you see arguments differently, take a second to support the channel. hit the like button, share this video with someone who constantly gets dragged into pointless debates, and subscribe to the channel if you want more insights on strategy, power, and clear thinking. Because this channel is not about surface-level motivation. It's about understanding how the mind works and learning how to use that understanding to move through the world with control. Remember this: you do not need to defeat fools in arguments. Most of the time, they defeat themselves. Your job is simply to stay above the noise and keep moving forward.